The haunting connection. I always thought Ouija boards were just a silly game until that fateful night. My friends and I gathered around, giggling, and placed our hands on the planchette. It moved on its own, spelling out eerie messages from a spirit named Samuel. We dismissed it as a prank, but the messages grew darker. As weeks passed, strange things began to happen in our homes. Shadows lurked in the corners, whispering voices echoed through empty hallways, and chilling cold spots appeared out of nowhere. The ominous presence of Samuel hung over us like a shroud. Desperate for answers, we sought the help of a paranormal investigator. She arrived with her equipment, determined to unravel the mystery. As she began her investigation, the atmosphere in the room grew heavy. Suddenly, the Ouija board planchette moved violently, spelling out a warning: leave or suffer. Ignoring the warning, we pressed on, demanding to know who Samuel was and what he wanted. The investigator, her face pale, explained that Samuel was not a mere spirit but a malevolent entity that had attached itself to us through the Ouija board. We had unwittingly invited this dark presence into our lives. Terrified, we followed the investigator's advice to break the connection. We gathered around the board once more, our hands trembling. With all our strength, we pushed the planchette to goodbye. The room trembled, and a deafening scream filled the air, but finally, it was over. Or so we thought. In the following days, our lives descended into chaos. Nightmares plagued our sleep, objects flew across rooms, and invisible hands seemed to grasp at our throats. Samuel's malevolence knew no bounds. We realized that we could never truly sever the connection, and our only hope was to confront Samuel head-on. Armed with knowledge from the investigator, we performed a risky ritual to trap Samuel within a protective circle. The air crackled with dark energy as we chanted ancient incantations. Samuel fought back with all his might, but we held our ground. In the end, he was imprisoned within the Ouija board, unable to harm us any longer. The board, now a cursed relic, was sealed away, hidden from the world. We had paid a heavy price for our curiosity, forever scarred by the horrors we had unleashed that night. 2. The family curse. When my grandmother passed away, we found her Ouija board hidden away in the attic. Out of curiosity, I decided to use it with my siblings. We contacted our grandmother, and she warned us of a family curse that plagued us for generations. Desperate for answers, we followed her guidance, but the curse had a dark price. The curse had plagued our family for centuries, bringing misery and tragedy to every generation. It was said to have been initiated by an ancestor who had dabbled in dark magic, and it couldn't be broken easily. My grandmother had spent her life researching ways to rid our family of this curse, and her notes were filled with cryptic instructions. We gathered our courage and began following the instructions, one by one. Each task was more unnerving than the last. We had to venture into haunted places, collect rare and forbidden herbs, and perform rituals that seemed straight out of a horror movie. All the while, we could feel the curse's malevolent presence growing stronger. As we delved deeper into the rituals, strange occurrences haunted us. Unseen forces knocked over objects, whispered chilling threats in the dead of night, and cast ominous shadows that seemed to watch our every move. It became clear that the curse was fighting back, determined to maintain its grip on our family. Despite the terror, we pressed on, driven by the hope of finally breaking the curse. Our efforts led us to a decrepit old cemetery where our ancestor, the originator of the curse, was buried. There, in the dead of night, we conducted the final ritual. It involved invoking the spirits of our ancestors to confront the malevolent force that had plagued us for so long. As we chanted the incantations, a swirling vortex of darkness erupted from the ground, and a bone-chilling wind howled through the cemetery. The spirits of our ancestors materialized, their faces twisted in pain and anger. They confronted the malevolent force, engaging in a supernatural battle that shook the very earth beneath our feet. For hours, we watched in horror as the battle raged on, until finally, with a blinding burst of light, the curse was broken. The malevolent force was banished, and the spirits of our ancestors returned to their rest. Exhausted and shaken, we left the cemetery, knowing that we had paid a heavy price to free our family from the curse. But as we looked back one last time, we saw our grandmother's ghostly figure, smiling at us, her eyes filled with gratitude and relief. We had succeeded in breaking the family curse, but the memories of those harrowing nights would haunt us forever. 3. The message from beyond. After my best friend's tragic death, I turned to a Ouija board for closure. It seemed to work. The planchette moved, spelling out comforting messages from my friend. But the more we communicated, the more it changed. It began to mimic my friend's voice, but it was different, distorted. One night, as I sat alone in my dimly lit room with the board, it spelled out a chilling message: "I'm not your friend." My heart pounded as I asked, "Who are you?" The planchette spelled out a name I couldn't recognize, a name from a language I'd never heard before. The room grew frigid, and an otherworldly presence enveloped me. I could sense that whatever I had contacted was not my friend but a malevolent entity masquerading as her. Terrified but determined, I demanded that it leave. The board resisted, the planchette moving violently. Objects in the room began to levitate, and an oppressive force pushed against me. I knew I was in a battle with a vengeful spirit. Desperate, I reached out to a paranormal expert, who advised me on a risky plan. Together, we conducted a complex ritual meant to banish the imposter. The room filled with incense smoke, and we chanted incantations. The malevolent entity fought fiercely, but slowly, it weakened. With one final surge of energy, the entity let out an agonizing scream and dissipated into nothingness. The room fell silent, and the Ouija board became still. I had rid my life of the sinister force that had pretended to be my friend, but I knew I could never forget that haunting encounter. 4. The accidental summoning. We played with the Ouija board at a party, thinking it was all fun and games. But when we asked who was with us, the board spelled out a name we didn't recognize. Suddenly, the room grew icy cold, and shadows moved on their own. We tried to say goodbye, but the board refused. Panic set in as the atmosphere grew oppressive. It was as though an unseen malevolent force had taken control of the room. Terrified, we reached out to a paranormal investigator, hoping for a solution. The investigator arrived with an air of trepidation, sensing the dark energy that permeated the house. She explained that our carelessness had allowed a powerful entity to cross over from the spirit world. It was a being hungry for human souls, and we had unwittingly invited it in. The investigator guided us through a harrowing process to cleanse the house. We recited ancient prayers, burned sage, and constructed protective barriers. The entity resisted with fury, causing objects to fly through the air and strange symbols to appear on the walls. For hours, we battled the malevolent force, our fear nearly overwhelming us, but with unwavering determination, we managed to weaken it enough to force it back through the portal. As the entity retreated, the room returned to normal, but our lives were forever changed. We had learned a haunting lesson about the dangers of dabbling with the supernatural. The memory of that night served as a chilling reminder that some doors should never be opened, for they lead to darkness and terror beyond imagination.